adjusting the controls of the comet.
Zog expertly navigated through the asteroid field.
Easy does it, Zog.
Almost there.
The asteroid they sought loomed large, its surface scarred with craters and dusted with cosmic debris. They were on the dark side, hidden from the watchful eyes of anyone aboard the Nebula Destroyer. With a gentle bump, the comet landed on a flat stretch of the asteroid. Zog cut the engines, and silence engulfed them, broken only by the distant hum of the destroyer. They were close.
Ready, Leo?
Zog asked, his hand hovering over his energy blaster.
Let's do this.
Leo grinned, his earlier apprehension replaced with a thrill of excitement. He unbuckled his harness and grabbed his own weapon, a device that could disable electronics with a pulse of energy. They had a plan, and they were ready to execute it. The asteroid's surface was a treacherous landscape of jagged rocks and deep craters. Zog and Leo moved cautiously, their boots crunching on the dusty ground. The gravity here was weak, making each step a challenge.
We need to reach that ridge.
Zog whispered, pointing to a rocky outcrop ahead.
We'll have a clear view of the destroyer's airlock from there.
Leo nodded, his eyes scanning their surroundings for any signs of danger. They trekked onward, their bodies small against the vastness of space. The silence was unnerving, broken only by their own breathing and the rhythmic thump of their hearts. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and they couldn't afford to make a mistake. As they neared the ridge, Zog held up a hand, signaling Leo to stop. He peered cautiously over the edge, his eyes adjusting to the faint light. There in the distance lay the Nebula Destroyer, a menacing behemoth of metal and weaponry. The airlock shimmered before them, a gateway to the heart of their enemy's domain. Zog pulled out a small, silver device, its surface etched with intricate circuits.
This should do the trick,
He muttered, his fingers working deftly. He pressed a button, and the device emitted a low hum. A beam of blue light shot out, connecting with the airlock's control panel. Numbers flickered on the device's screen as Zog bypassed the security protocols. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked, the weight of their mission heavy on his mind. Suddenly, a green light flashed on the device.
Got it.
Zog whispered, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. The airlock hissed, and the heavy door slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond.
Let's go.
Leo said, his voice barely a whisper. He followed Zog into the belly of the beast, their hearts pounding in unison. The air inside the Nebula Destroyer was cold and stale, heavy with the scent of ozone and metal. Zog and Leo moved like shadows, their footsteps silent on the metallic floor. The corridor was deserted, the only sound the distant hum of the ship's engines. They passed by rows of unmarked doors, each one potentially hiding danger. Zog kept his energy blaster at the ready, his senses on high alert. He could feel the tension radiating from Leo, who gripped his own weapon tightly. They reached an intersection and paused, listening intently for any sign of life. Zog consulted the map displayed on his wristwatch.
The crystal should be in the main control room.
He whispered, pointing down the left corridor.
Let's move.
They continued their stealthy advance, their every move calculated to avoid detection. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and they couldn't afford to be seen. The door to the main control room stood ajar, a sliver of light escaping from within.
Stay put.
Zog motioned for Leo to stay put as he crept closer, his back pressed against the cold metal wall. He peered cautiously around the doorframe, his heart pounding in his chest. The control room was a hive of activity, bathed in the eerie glow of holographic displays. Crew members scurried about, their faces illuminated by the flickering light, and in the center of it all stood Captain Nebula, his tall, imposing figure radiating an aura of menace. In his hand, Captain Nebula held aloft a glowing orb, its facets shimmering with an otherworldly light, the Zintar Crystal. Its power was palpable, even from this distance.
We found it.
Zog felt a surge of hope. They had found it. But their mission was far from over. They needed to get their hands on that crystal and escape this ship without being caught. Captain Nebula's laughter echoed through the control room, sending chills down Zog's spine.
With the Zintar Crystal in my grasp, the galaxy will tremble before me.
He boomed, his voice dripping with megalomania. He admired the crystal in his hand, his eyes gleaming with avarice.
Yes, Captain, your power will be unmatched.
A nearby crew member stammered, his face pale with fear. Captain Nebula smirked, clearly reveling in the adulation.
I will crush all who oppose me. The galaxy will be mine to rule. And with the Zintar Crystal's energy, I will become unstoppable.
Zog's blood ran cold as he listened to Captain Nebula's sinister plan. He had to act fast. He couldn't let this madman unleash the crystal's power upon the galaxy. He glanced back at Leo, who was waiting patiently, his expression grim. It was time to put their plan into action.
Leo, I'm gonna cause a diversion. While everyone's distracted, you make your move. Get the crystal.
Are you sure about this, Zog?
It's our only chance. Be careful, Leo.
Zog crept back to Leo, his mind racing. They had to get that crystal, but how? Captain Nebula was heavily guarded and constantly surrounded by his crew. A direct assault was out of the question. They needed a distraction, something to draw attention away from the captain, even for a moment. Leo's eyes widened, but he didn't hesitate. Zog nodded, a determined glint in his eye. He clapped Leo on the shoulder and melted back into the shadows, making his way towards the ship's engineering section. Leo watched him go, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew what he had to do. He took a deep breath, steeling his nerves for the task ahead. The fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. An ear-splitting alarm suddenly blared through the Nebula Destroyer, its shrill wail echoing through the corridors. Zog, hidden in the engineering section, smiled grimly. He had sabotaged the ship's power regulators, creating a cascade of system failures. As planned, the diversion drew the attention of everyone in the control room, including Captain Nebula. He barked orders at his crew, his voice laced with panic. This was Leo's chance. Leo seized the opportunity, slipping into the chaos of the control room unnoticed. He kept his head down, blending in with the panicked crew members. He inched closer to Captain Nebula, his eyes fixed on the Zintar Crystal. Captain Nebula, his back to Leo, was too preoccupied with the malfunctioning systems to notice the danger lurking behind him. Leo's hand trembled as he reached for the energy disruptor hidden beneath his cloak. Leo lunged, raising his energy disruptor and firing a pulse of energy directly at Captain Nebula. The captain cried out as the energy coursed through him, momentarily paralyzing him. The Zintar Crystal tumbled from his grasp. Leo snatched the crystal out of the air, his heart racing. He turned and sprinted towards the exit, dodging panicked crew members as he ran. Alarms blared, and the ship shook violently around him, but Leo didn't slow down. He burst through the door and into the corridor, his lungs burning. He could hear the sounds of pursuit behind him, but he didn't dare look back. He had the crystal. Now he just had to get to Zog and get off this ship. He raced through the corridors, his memory of the ship's layout guiding him. He could hear Zog shouting his name in the distance.
Over here, Leo. You got it.
Let's go!
Leo skidded to a halt beside Zog, who was waiting for him near the airlock they had entered through. Zog exclaimed, his eyes widening as he saw the glowing crystal in Leo's hand. They sprinted towards their ship, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. They scrambled inside the comet, and Zog slammed his hand down on the controls. The engines roared to life, and the ship shot out of the Nebula Destroyer's airlock just as an explosion rocked the enemy vessel. They soared away from the crippled destroyer, the asteroid field shrinking behind them. Leo clutched the Zintar Crystal, its warmth radiating through him. They had done it. They had saved the galaxy.
That was a close one.
We make a pretty good team, you and I.
And with that, they set course for home, the Zintar Crystal safely in their possession. The galaxy was safe, thanks to the bravery of two unlikely heroes.